Well, hello again, my friends. It's a long time since I've put a video on YouTube, so I thought I'd do another one, especially this morning. I've been doing my usual scan of videos on YouTube, and I keep seeing these thumbnails of videos indicating that images are being obtained, apparently, of the planet known as Proxima B, a planet slightly larger than Earth, which is orbiting Proxima Centauri, which is about 4.25 light years away from here. And it seems to give the impression that there is life on Proxima B. I have been a member of a particular spiritual organization founded 1956 by a pretty advanced master of yoga by the name of Sir George King. In his lectures, even in the 1950s, Sir George King was talking about the people of the Centauri system. He knew about them even then. I have been a student of metaphysics for 44 years under Sir George King, and even studying aspects before that, a long time before that. So I've done a fair bit of homework. I've actually, I used to work, choosing my path as I go. I used to work at London's Natural History Museum as a security warder, and I would speak to professional scientists in the earth sciences, life sciences occasionally, and once or twice they have objected to what I've said and would criticize me for it, and yet I had actually spent more time, more years studying my subject than the person who was criticizing me. Not only that, because I have been a student of metaphysics, my horizons are far wider than theirs. As a result of my studies, under the best possible teacher that anyone could ever find, namely Sir George King, founder of the Aetherius Society, which incidentally I'm not here to represent, I'm talking off my own back. I have learned more about planets, stars and galaxies, the things that actually matter, than most astronomers even suspect. But you can't tell them, because if I do, they will point the finger and say, well, you're not a scientist, why should I listen to you? You know, and there is a degree of arrogance, not in everyone, but largely throughout scientific circles, as well as pressure from their employers, and those who support them, you know. And a lot of professional scientists have to do what they're told, rather than more than a century ago some of the scientists have just followed their own interests regardless. It's a shame they can't do that so much these days. Anyway, get back to the subject. I keep seeing these images of supposedly Proxima B, and it actually makes me sad. Yes, there is life in the in the Centauri system, there is. But what mainstream science on this Earth, I don't know about every individual, but for most of them, what they haven't realized is that every planet in this solar system is inhabited, and some of the moons. More often than not, by humanoids, generally bigger than us, taller. On many of the planets in this system, 7 to 9 foot, of height is not unusual. But I don't mean like bean poles. I mean they're built, with correct proportions, but millions and hundreds of millions of years senior to us. on every planet and many of the moons. And the one thing that is missing from mainstream science, and I've tried to talk about this over and over again, but it's very difficult to find anyone who will listen. Those who have studied metaphysics, members of the Theosophical Society, for example, and other similar organizations, I don't know much about them, but maybe the Rosicrucians as well, you know, but metaphysical organizations. Many of them know, not guess, some believe, yes, but there are those who know that the whole of manifestation, that which we call the universe, at any point, in any spatial coordinates, if you could zoom down, as it were, smaller and smaller until you get beyond, in smallness, below the scale of an electron, keep going, you will find that the only thing that actually exists is a medium called ether. Ether behaves very much like water. You can think of ether as being like a higher octave of water. That is the only thing that exists in what we call the universe. There's nothing else. But just as the waves coming in on the shore, in a big lake or the ocean, you can see individual waves. What you're actually watching is the motion of the water, and you see differences in motion. Well, all the subatomic particles, atoms, etc., and the travelling energies, travelling waves, like light and radio waves, etc., and all the other different types of energy which travel. There are the two types of movement, of vibration of the ether. There are standing wave vibrations, some of which we call subatomic particles, and there are travelling waves, like, as I said, like radio waves, etc. But what isn't realised, apparently, by mainstream science, is that those vibrations of the ether field occur in octaves. And with all their science and their technology, and they're looking through this solar system, and they're looking at, the Proxima B, and they're looking into the distance at distant star systems and even distant galaxies, and what they don't realize, many of them, is that they're looking at part of one octave of vibration. There are at least 7 octaves of vibration throughout the universe. In some places there may be more, but certainly 7 everywhere. Look at this earth where we live now. You see what we regard as a physical world around us. But all the matter, all the matter that makes up this world is really occurring as vibrations in the ether within one octave. There are 6 other physical worlds around Earth, here, now, in this space where we are. The same as on other planets. All the planets in this system, have 7 physical worlds around each planet. So you go to Mars and you may not see any Martians walking around, yet there are Martians there. Martians who are countless millions of years senior to us in evolution. Many of them exist in higher vibrations. There are vast cities, city complexes and the like. Immense buildings on some of the planets, but many of these exist in higher vibrations. On this planet you've got people who have lived in this world, and the ignorant person would say that they have died. No, they haven't died, but this is a vehicle that they're riding around in, an electrically driven organic robot vehicle, and when this comes to the end of its life they get out and they transit into a, what's the other word, transpose, whatever. They move into higher vibrations. All your friends and relatives who you thought had died, are still very much alive in physical bodies, in physical environments. From here, whether you're good, bad or indifferent, there's no hell there, and there's no mythical heaven. Everyone, regardless of whether they're saintly or evil, will pass on to the astral plane, which is the second octave of the seven, which is here in this same space. You go to other planets like Mars, and you've got, I don't know what the numbers are. We know from what they have told us, and there is a lot of information from them, we know that the numbers of individuals on other planets of this system is nothing like the numbers on this Earth. But it could be in millions on Mars. I don't know the numbers. But the majority of them exist in higher vibrations, and because they are millions of years our senior, they have developed tremendous control over their body structure, and as an act of will they can travel between the different octaves that we would refer to here as the planes or realms. They can move between the planes at will. They can travel immense distances without having to use a mechanically constructed, an artificially constructed vehicle. One of the Venusian masters has said many times, if we were on Venus and we wanted to come to Earth, we don't necessarily have to use what you call a flying saucer. They can dematerialize there, rematerialize here at will, because they are millions and hundreds of millions of years our senior. So when you get, these clips of Proxima B, after all these decades, eventually we've discovered life. Well, they haven't been looking very hard, have they? Not only are all of the planets in this system, and probably hundreds of millions or more, inhabited worlds throughout this galaxy, but even the planets themselves are living beings. The term the Mother Earth is not just a poetic phrase. At the centre of this earth is a life force known in mystical circles as a logos, and she is a number of billions of years further down the line than we are. She's not a single entity like we are. She is a vast multiple entity, and if you want to know how that came about, I suggest you start by reading the book called The 9 Freedoms, which takes evolution in this solar system from where we are as far as we can go in this system. And that's the first time in that book, by the way, that it's ever been given to men on Earth. It's called The 9 Freedoms, published by the Aetherius Society. All the planets, stars, and even galaxies are living beings, but they're not single entities. They are multiple entities which operate as single entities. Anyone who lives in an environment where on a coolish night maybe you go outside and you look up and you can see a clear sky, there are more than 10,000 stars visible to the naked eye, and every one of those glowing dots is a living entity. How much life do you want? There are two things, among others, there are two things in particular that a scientist will say, you have to have in order to have science. One is everything has to be expressed in numbers, and the other is repeatability. If you knew enough about it, absolutely everything in the whole universe can be expressed in numbers. Who was it? Was it Einstein or someone who actually said God doesn't play dice? No. It's all based on mathematics, if you like, and it's an ordered universe. But even in an ordered system, sometimes the order is so complex that you can't see the order, and it looks chaotic, but it isn't. I'll just mention this. It's not where I intended to go, but I'll mention it in passing. There is one law of physics, if you like, law of God, call it what you like. There is only one law within which everything operates, and it's that simple. It's been stated in science without people realizing the significance of it, and it was stated 3,000 years ago by the great Lord Krishna, and every master who followed him, including Jesus and those in modern times, have all stated this one law in one way or another. The great Lord Krishna and the masters who followed him, who came here from other worlds, they all said that action and reaction are opposite and equal. Jesus, talking to a less well-educated people, if he'd have said that, you know, at some, I don't know, in Bethlehem or somewhere, if he'd gone to some marketplace or whatever, town square or whatever, and he had people gathered round, if he'd have said action and reaction are opposite and equal, they'd have looked at him blank. They wouldn't have known what he was talking about. So he made it easier for them. He said, as you sow, so shall you reap. Yes. What goes around comes around. He who lives by the sword dies by the sword. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. It's the one law. And there is nothing in the universe that operates outside of that. Action and reaction are opposite and equal. It's an ordered universe. Okay? But the big point about this is, I'm amazed that so-called educated people, and some with strings of degrees, haven't realized yet that the whole of manifestation, that which we call the universe, exists in octaves of vibration. There are some people who are starting to pick up on it but interpret it wrongly, and they talk about multiverses. It was called a universe because there's only one. But that one single universe is arranged in octaves of vibration. So the other universes that they think they're picking up on are actually just higher octaves of vibration in this one universe. There aren't multiple universes. That is one of the biggest problems that mainstream science has, is that they have not realized about octaves of vibration. You know, probably, I don't know the figures, I'm not a scientist, I don't claim to be, but probably more than 90, possibly even more than 95% of what exists in the space where we are currently existing, most people are just totally oblivious to. You know, it's quite possible that there are individuals on the astral plane, the astral realms, who have passed from this world at some time in the past, who may have picked up on the fact that I'm talking about this and maybe stood somewhere here, you know, listening to me. I'm going cold. I think there is someone. I've suddenly got that cold vibration, which is usually the pickup of somebody's aura. Somebody stood close. So if there's anyone out there psychic looking at this, tell me whether you can see any movement. I'll try the other side. There's a fan in the background, so you might see that moving. But there are billions of human beings on this planet in physical bodies in a physical environment that mainstream science knows nothing about. And then they send one of these little crawling probes, you know, rovers, to Mars, and they say there's no life there, when they can't, with that same technology, they can't detect most of the human beings on this planet. You know, the whole universe is teeming with life. This solar system is teeming with life. The planets themselves, the stars, the galaxies, it's all life. How much life do you want? And you have to realize, if you're into astronomy, exobiologists or whatever, astrophysicists, you have to realize that life does not have to exist in an environment like ours. So they're looking for Earth-like planets. But in this solar system alone, most of the inhabited worlds are not like Earth. And yet it's all teeming with life. So the sooner that the mental horizons, sorry, forgive my difficulty in finding the right words, you know, the horizons that science currently has, for the most part, need to be expanded. Every scientist a would-be scientist, young boy or girl, who wants to move into science, should study at least some elementary metaphysics before they start dealing with their scientific subjects. And it's because the majority of so-called scientists have not studied metaphysics. That's why they're so limited in their perception, in their understanding. I didn't get any O levels or A levels at my secondary school. I didn't go to colleges. I don't have degrees. And yet, in basic principle, I have a greater, wider understanding of what I'm looking at when I look at the night sky than many of the astronomers do. They see balls of rock and balls of gas. I see living beings who have bodies which are quite different to ours. I see beings who are hundreds and hundreds of millions of years, and believe it or not, even hundreds of billions of years more advanced than we are. There's, that there are trends, I just throw in a bit of humour. If I get this wrong, I'm sorry, but as I understand it, apparently, was it Einstein or Tesla? No, I can't remember whether it was Einstein or Tesla. No, it's Einstein, that's right. He actually, for a few years, he actually studied in a German university. Was it at Cologne or somewhere? And one year, one of his students came up to him and said, "Excuse me, Mr. Einstein, I've noticed that the exam questions this year are the same as last year." "Ah, yes," said Einstein, "but this year all the answers are different." And you see, that's science for you. It has fashions. Fashions come and go. For decades they had this nonsense idea of a Big Bang, and now some of them are beginning to realise that there was no Big Bang. That's how they interpreted it at the time, and they're beginning to realise that they were wrong. When you look on YouTube, for example, why do you keep seeing these videos or the thumbnails and underneath it says, "We got this wrong," or "We found something we can't explain"? Why? Because they didn't study elementary metaphysics before they started, and therefore they come to things that, yes, they can't explain them, because they don't understand the fundamentals yet, not well enough. Okay, I was going to say something else then, but I've sidetracked. Forgotten what it was. Anyway, I'll leave it at that because I've covered the main point. The universe is in octaves, and you're only looking at a few percent with your telescopes and your space probes, your Voyagers and whatever, and your rovers you send to other planets and all this stuff, and your telescopes. You're only looking at a few percent of what's there. Most of it you can't see. I'm saying this as it occurs to me, as you can probably tell. This is spontaneous. I've been a member of the Aetherius Society for over 44 years, founded by a Western master of yoga who was the best UFO contactee on record, period. There is no one out there who has claimed a fraction of what he is known to have done. That's it. Through him, information has been given to this earth about many things, information that is not available through any other source. Not to ordinary people, it isn't. And the two books that everyone should take note of, one is called The 12 Blessings. It contains a number of orations given by a Venusian master that everyone at least knows by name, even if they don't realize the details of his background. The 12 Blessings, and a book which was given to us in 1961 called The 9 Freedoms, which was given by a very advanced Martian intelligence. The 9 Freedoms gives the basic outline of your personal evolution, going from where you are to as far as you can evolve in this solar system, you know, it's all laid out for you. You don't have to guess, you don't have to work it out, it's there in plain text. Okay? The 12 blessings and the 9 freedoms. Everyone, and certainly every scientist, should read both of those books and become familiar with them, because it will open up avenues of thought and expand their awareness to an unbelievable extent. Okay? I've said what I wanted to say. Wake up, science. I'm not criticizing scientists, I love science. And I'm not pointing the finger at any particular individual scientists. But science as a whole, wake up and realize that you're only looking at a fraction of what's there and trying to make assessments about the whole when most of it you're not even aware of. Okay? I've said my piece. I've been wanting to say this for a long while. Blessings to everyone who watches this. Thank you, my dear friends. I've lost my... there it is. Thank you. Bye-bye for now.